Good morning. Welcome to the Way of the Cross, Meditations for Holy Week. And I want to begin by reading you the passage of Jesus cleansing the temple, which follows straight after Palm Sunday, is almost part of the Palm Sunday passage in Matthew's Gospel, our Gospel for the year. So this is Matthew 21, verses 12 through to 17. Jesus went into the temple and chased out everyone who was selling and buying. He turned over the tables of the money changers and the benches of the ones who were selling doves. He told them, "The scriptures say, 'My house should be called a place of worship,' but you have turned it into a place where robbers hide." Blind and lame people came to Jesus in the temple and he healed them. But the chief priests and the teachers of the law of Moses were angry when they saw his miracles and heard the children shouting praises to the Son of David. The men said to Jesus, Don't you hear what those children are saying?" "Yes, I do," Jesus answered. "And don't you know that the scriptures say, 'Children and infants will sing praises'?" Then Jesus left the city and went into the village of Bethany, where he spent the night. Let us wait on the Lord, for in his word is our hope. I'm very grateful to my friend Steve for an email recently where he said how important this passage or a similar passage was. I think it was in John's Gospel. Jesus being angry and how important that was to his coming to faith, because Jesus was being angry and handling his anger. He's being angry but not going berserk. And that was really important to him. And I found that quite shocking because I grew up aware of the destructive nature of anger, how destructive anger can be. I became a bit frightened of anger. I suppressed anger until it builds up so much, and then it bursts out and I sort of join in with the angry people of my past. And all that is very unhelpful. So, why do I find this difficult? My first churches focused on the anger, the wrath of God. And it's been hugely important to me to discover the love of God. And my experience of contemplative prayer has been to connect me to the love of God. Knowing that I'm loved by God is deeply and deeply important to me. And says I have one sermon, and that is, we are loved by God. I think I have more than one sermon, but there's truth in what she says. So, and the experience of many contemplatives, of being of this contemplative prayer, brings us into an experience of the love of God. But I was challenged by Steve to recognize that God has wider emotions, and that to grow, I need to embrace more of God's emotions. And so I've been trying that in the last weeks, to engage with God's emotions. Maybe that helps me to engage with my deeper emotions and other people's deeper emotions, not just put the barriers up when they are less than complimentary. So that's been really helpful. My experience of how is God feeling about the current situation is of God's great sadness about what is happening in our world today. Some Christians have suggested God is angry and is punishing us. And that is not my experience. That does not chime with my understanding of God. I think there are questions to be answered. If God is sad, then why doesn't he do something about it? And I think there are answers to that, but that would take another video to explain or dig into. So let's stick with this passage. Jesus chasing out in an angry way those buying and selling, overturning tables of the money changers and the benches of the one who are selling doves. This is real anger. He's causing a huge disturbance in the temple because he's angry about the way the mechanics of religion have taken over the heart of being there with God. And so often this happens in our churches. The mechanics of how we do worship take over the meeting with God, and God gets squashed out. Now Matthew gives us a bit more about why Jesus is angry. He's making space for the blind and the lame, and he's healing them. He's making space for children. Now, the anger of the priests and the teachers is about Jesus doing miracles. I suspect their anger is to do with ego issues. Yesterday, we men are the most important. We whole, well people are the most important. Let's keep the ill people out because they are of lower status. That is awful. God does not have favourites like that. He loves all people. And I think he has a special love for the poor and the ill and the broken. So their ego issues, getting angry here, are getting in the way of what God wants, as so often happens. And children were considered less than human. Well, women were less than human, and children even less so. That is not what God wants. So Jesus is making space for the people who are ill, for those who are lesser in community, the children. He stops at letting women into the sort of best space of the temple. But I think the trajectory of Jesus' teaching is to accept women fully. And that's how he was with his disciples. Accept women fully into the life of the church. So good on you, Church of England, for ordaining women and consecrating them as bishops. Took us a long time, but we got there in the end. So the challenge of this passage is to embrace the full emotion of God. Embrace the pain of God as he sees Jesus walking towards the cross. Embrace the pain of God as he looks on Jesus suffering on the cross for us, for our world. Embrace the pain of God as he looks on our world today and pray for our world. Ask God to have mercy on our world. Make space for God, for his emotion. Make space for all people in your prayer and your worship. Those people who you would like to feel better than. Make space for them. Give them a special place in your prayers. Make space for God in this Holy Week so that when we come back to our churches, we will make space for all people, not just the people who are a bit like us, which we tend to encourage those who are like us into our churches and be a bit frightened of those who are less like us. Don't be afraid. God is with you. God is not afraid of people who are less like us. Catch God's emotion, God's love reaching out to all people as you journey with Jesus towards the cross this week. So may we make space for all that God is, that we may be changed by our experience of him. Amen.